Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Ted, and today I'm joined by...
Nerdarchist Dave.
Today we're going to continue with our Intro to D&D series, The Classes, this time with the Wizard.
First off, let's thank Easy Roller Dice for sponsoring this video and this series. Whether it's your first set of dice or your 100th set of dice, Easy Roller Dice, down below in the description you can find a link to easyrollerdice.com/nerdarchy with a special one-time use coupon code 20% off. Go get your Easy Roller Dice.
Easy Roller Dice for all your dice rolling needs.
So we're going back into our intro into D&D, into the character classes. We were at the last one, the Wizard, which you can find on page 112 of your Player's Handbook.
Absolutely. So, let's get into what is a wizard.
Well, this one's easy, right? If you read fantasy novels, maybe you've seen some movies like Lord of the Rings or something, or Excalibur. There's some wizards that come to mind automatically. Who would you think of?
So, we could easily go to Gandalf, Merlin, Albus Dumbledore, pretty much Harry Potter, the whole thing. They're all, "You're a wizard, Harry."
It says it right there.
It says it. People, a wizard is somebody who casts spells. And we've gone into, other spell casting type classes within this, but you study magic, you learn to cast spells, that's what a wizard does.
Right. Or maybe you've read some classic Wizards of the Coast TSR novels like Forgotten Realms or Dragonlance, where you have Race Lemagir, and Forgotten Realms, of course, is Ilminster. But then as you actually delve into Dungeons and Dragons, we harken back to Greyhawk with a bunch of really famous wizards.
So actually we'll see some of these names in the actual player's handbook in the spell section. So you've got Odaluk, you've got Melf, you've got Tensor, you've got Bigby. They're all famous casters that have been enriched throughout the D&D history.
So now delving into our wizard, we're going to start off with their hit die. They have the lowest in the game.
They are squishy. These are the ones that they do not want to be in combat. So you have to be careful about that. And going along with that, how much armor do they get?
Zilch, 0, none, zippo.
and then what about training with weapons? Do they get a lot of that?
They don't really do that. They you can maybe a quarterstaff or a sling or a dagger or a dart, things that usually can double for tools as well,
and things that are pretty easy to learn and use. That's what wizards can do, because they spend their time reading books and living in libraries and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they don't get any tool proficiencies, and they only get 2 skill proficiencies.
This is the part that is a little different than what has been done in the past, but they're going to have choices of things that are cerebral.
So getting to saving throws, that's the last of the proficiencies.
So they get intelligence and wisdom because they have the ability to resist effects that are going towards the mind.
Now going into wizards, their main thing is going to be spellcasting, right? They're a full spellcaster.
Absolutely. They have the full range that the other full casters do. They get access to spells of 1st through 9th. And not only that, but they have access to what no other spellcaster has, and that's what's called the spellbook.
Yeah, the spellbook is actually what makes the wizard the most versatile of all casters. Where other casters, they have a certain amount of spells they know, or each day they pray for different spells. While the wizard, he collects them in a book and kind of keeps them with him, and he can change them out every day.
Right. Now, that book also doubles as another incredibly useful tool that very few other classes get access to. Do you want to get into that?
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of them that get access to it. It's just that they don't get it access the same way a wizard does. So that's ritual casting. And that is basically being able to cast a certain spells that have the ritual tag on them. And it just takes longer to cast them, but you don't expend any resources. That's incredibly useful. Now, the other classes that have it, like the Bard, Druid, and Cleric, sure, it's great, but it only works if you have memorized that spell for the day you prepared it, where the wizard doesn't have to prepare that spell.
He just pulls out the book and says, "Oh, I'm going to cast Detect Magic. I don't need to have this prepared. I could cast it using my resources if I had it prepared, real quick, the one action, but you're typically not using this in combat, so you take the minute, you cast Detect Magic, and boom, no resources spent. I didn't have to prepare it. Write it right out of the book.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really powerful tools of the wizard and the spell book. But the spell book is actually kind of a double-edged sword that cuts both ways.
Well, it cuts both ways because not only do you need to have it to be able to prepare your spells, that means it can be taken away from you, but it costs money to put new spells in your spell book that you just find through adventuring. So it can be taken away, and it can be a resource drain depending upon how your GM is actually running the game.
Now, that being said, every wizard gets a certain amount of spells to start off with, and each level they get a couple of new ones. But you're gonna be limited by your resources, whether you encounter other spells. So your GM is gonna have a lot of control over that part of your wizard's life.
Absolutely. Having to make spell choices as you not only create your character but level up is only part of the complexity in the wizard. The other complexity that's part of this is they actually have the most amount of archetypes, or in this case traditions, that, in comparison to any of the other classes in the player's handbook.
Yeah, some classes get them at first level, most get them at third. Wizard gets his tradition, he picks it at second level, and that's when he chooses, his specialty school of magic, whether it's necromancers and he's speaking with dead and playing with dead things, or he's an invoker that can blow things up.
You also have diviner, which is about, fortune telling, scrying, knowing things that aren't close to you. You could have enchanters that create effects on people, or have the ability to take over other people's minds.
Illusions make false things appear, and you have conjuration, which they are summoners essentially. So you got all kinds of cool stuff.
There's 8 different schools to choose from in the player's handbook, and between which school do you want to belong to, what spells are you going to take, it creates the most diverse options for classes in the player's handbook.
Yeah, and not only that, depending on what your specialty is, it actually makes it a little bit cheaper to learn and put in your spell book the spells from your school of magic. So that's worth noting as well.
Absolutely.
One of the things worth noting too, as a wizard gets to be the higher levels, he gets extremely powerful. He gets 2 abilities that are definitely worth mentioning.
These abilities, they're called spell mastery and signature spells. They get the ability to have access to magic that don't deplete resources.
So the interesting thing about spell mastery and signature spells, they actually kind of function very similar in a sense that they let you cast spells without expending resources or preparing spells. Depending on which ability you get, one does one does the other to a certain extent. So it just literally puts more magic at the wizard's fingertips that he can use whenever he wants.
Absolutely. So that's a lot of magic. That's a lot of potent spellcasting. So what kind of races are going to wind up being good spellcasters, be good wizards?
Okay, so essentially the key stat for a wizard is going to be intelligence. So there's really only 4 races in the whole player's handbook that can actually get a bonus to their intelligence score.
So first we have the forest gnome and the tiefling, and they actually get pluses to intelligence.
Yes, it's not their primary ability, but they still get bonuses, like you said. And both the tiefling and the forest gnome also have a little bit of magical ability as well.
So the forest gnome is geared towards illusions, so you're going to get some bumps there. And the tiefling actually has access to magic as well.
Yeah, they have a different spell progression. It's going to give them different spells to use, some of which aren't even on the wizard's spell list, so it just makes for an interesting choice. And then, of course, that brings us to the 2 races that we pretty much mention
every single time. That's the half-elf and the human. The half-elf and the human both have floating pluses that you can put anywhere, which means, of course, they could go into intelligence, making them better wizards than any of the other ones not mentioned.
Right, and the half-elf automatically gets more skill proficiencies, so you have that to tap into. If you're using the variant on the human, they get skill proficiencies as well. So both of them are excellent choices for wizards.
So now, as always, you can play anything that you want. Playing a half-orc wizard, it could be shamanistic and tribal, and it could be really cool. I've seen it done. It's a lot of fun.
Think of the tattoos.
So you could literally do whatever you want. So if you have any questions for us, or you have any questions about wizards, put them in the comments down below. Either us or any of our great Nerdarchy fans will be more than happy to answer them for you. While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
And speaking of down there, you'll find a description where you find that link to easyrollerdice.com/Nerdarchy, where you'll also find that one-time use coupon code for 20% off.
So until next time, stay nerdy.